Turquoise Mama here, and today I would like to talk about neurodiversity and the Christian realm. I am a Christian. I grew up in church and around other Christians. Was raised in a Christian home. It's been over 50 years because I'm going to be 54 this year. I was going through some videos. I'm wanting to assess things because I am a self-diagnosed neurodiverse person through watching a bunch of videos on YouTube and seeing how I have related to a lot of what the people are saying. So I am going through different videos and different memories in my mind and assessing things and trying to see them from this new light and new perspective of being neurodiverse. And it's definitely a journey and an eye-opener, and I am definitely seeing things from a different perspective. And I'm hoping that things change. I was watching a video about Marilyn Manson and his upbringing. It was a documentary about him, or not Marilyn Manson, that's the character, but him, Brian, and his upbringing and things that he went through. And I couldn't help but to watching that video and listening to him talking about how his environment and how people were treating him and how he thought when growing up, that I was thinking, I wonder if he's neurodiverse. And it also made me think about how he was treated in the Christian realm that he was in at the time. And I thought maybe he might have gone in a different direction in his life if he would have been treated differently by the Christians around him. I certainly might have, I don't know if I would have gone in a different path in that extreme of his extreme versus mine or someone else's. I've been a Christian the whole time. I haven't really gone out and sown my wild oats and done crazy stuff. I've always wanted to serve the Lord and do what Jesus wanted me to do. But I also think that was part of a lot of my thinking in being in the church environment. And I have been trying to think if maybe I was masking back then. I watched a lot of videos about masking, and so I'm like, well, okay, if I was masking growing up because I didn't know that this is how I thought, how did I mask? And I think a lot of it is there's a masking that is already there in the Christian realm because you're always trying to present yourself in the best way because you're supposed to be Christ-like. And there's a mentality in the Christian realm that no one wants to talk about the trials, the actual things you're really going through on a day-to-day basis, and different things that you may get involved in and may deal with. A lot of the extreme stuff, drug use or alcoholism, different types of abuse. So there's a lot of hush-hush in that realm because you're always trying to put your best foot forward. You're always trying to look a certain way. So there's always a lot of masking already in that environment. And so I'm trying to assess memories and see how I might have been masking. And it's still a journey. I'm still trying to figure it out. But anyway, just going through this video about this musician it just made me again think the church and Christians, we need to talk about this more. We need to understand it more, and we need to be we need to understand how other people are thinking as best as we can. And that's a whole subject there of being neurodiverse in a typical world, right? And then you put on top of it, you put in the Christian realm where there's all these dynamics going on already. And I think of memories of how I might have been treated by other people in my church and churches I went to, and wondering how I would have talked or act differently if I had known about these traits and seen myself this way. So that's where I'm wanting to make a video and just kind of bring up the subject. If there's anybody who wants to ask a question or has any thoughts, of course, there's the comment section. And I'll do my best to answer any questions anybody has. I know with myself, I'm seeing myself as someone who needs to process information a lot slower. And I think that has been my biggest, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. I didn't know I was struggling with that all my life, is trying to process information. So stress levels, I didn't know how stressful I was growing up. I look back now and remember times that I would spend the weekend in bed because I was just, I guess, exhausted. Now I look back and I realize I went through work all week long, trying to process all this information, being around other people, which, the social struggle with social environments. So being at work all week and come to the weekend, I realized I didn't want to be around anybody, but I was still involved with church. So I would go to church on Sundays. And, you have your good times and you're able to do this for, months at a time. And then you just burn out. Happen to be on your best behavior all the time. Wanting to be a good worker, wanting to be a good Christian, wanting to be a good citizen, so you're at the grocery store trying to be a nice person and not, you're not in there, as these days people would say, Karens. You don't want to be that type of person where you're complaining and stuff at the store. You're at church, you're trying to be a good Christian. You're at work, trying to be the good worker. And I didn't realize how much that was exhausting me. And now I see, and it's really freeing, because some of the feelings and the stressful feelings that I've had and the bitterness, things that, I've always grown up feeling bitter about a lot of stuff, and that has left. Because now I just realize I was just trying to process a billion pieces of information in a short matter of time. And now that I am learning how to process all this stuff that happens during the day, and people talking to me and trying to do the activity, cooking, cleaning, just trying to watch a video, and then people are interrupting me, or there's noises going on in the rest of the house, and all this different stuff that I'm realizing I just have to learn how to manage processing that. And it's been great the last few weeks that I've really been trying to do that. I've been able to calm myself down and not feel so stressed, bitter, angry, frustrated, have anxiety about stuff. So I'm also realizing that there's a lot of things that have caused me anxiety just because I happen to process all what's going on around me. Um, so I'm hoping that I can eventually, through this video or just whoever I'm around, and be able to open up the conversation about that. And especially with my fellow Christians, because there's a lot of room for growth in that realm. And I hope this is a beginning of opening up doors to share and converse with other people that deal with this, and we can deal with it in a better way than I grew up in and my generation grew up in. And Brian, the guy that does this character, Marilyn Manson, him and I are the same age. He was born the same year as I was. So I understand what he dealt with, because I was living in that same era, and now I didn't manifest my neurodiversity like he did. So it wasn't evident. I realize now that it wasn't so evident because of the environment I was in. I was in a safe environment in most of where I was at, and so that manifestation wasn't seen because I didn't have to act out. I was a good kid. I did, I wanted to obey the rules. I didn't want to, rock the boat. And so I did what my teachers told me to do. I did what, the Sunday school teachers told me to do. I did at home I would do what I could with my parents. Of course, there's a whole other issue. There's always a different dynamic in your home, and there's other issues that I'll probably go into in later videos with growing up in the home I grew up more. But I think a lot of the manifestations of the neurodiversity wasn't obvious because of my environment. And I was in a safe environment where things were calm and I didn't act out. And the schools I went to, when I went to a very, very small private junior high and high school, it was on the same campus. It was part of the same system. And the junior high was actually just 2 years. It was 7th and 8th grade. And then the high school was 9 through 12, and they were on the same campus, even though they were separate. They each one had their own principal, but it was a very small school. My graduating class only had 200 people in my high school graduating class, and we were the biggest class at that time. The previous year's class had 90 people, 90 students in the graduating class their year before. Actually, you know what? I have that wrong. I had 90 people. There was only 200 students in the whole school, and our graduating class was 90. That's what it was. I'm sorry. My graduating class only had 90 people, 90 students. I went to a very, very, very small high school. It was a private Christian school. So I was in an environment then, so I didn't, a lot of the ostracism that a lot of neurodiverse people talk about that they get in like junior high and high school, I didn't really deal with that because it was just pretty much a bunch of us Christian kids there. And, we all were good kids. There wasn't there wasn't really a lot of stuff going on that was bad stuff. We didn't have gun, shootings and, gang members and stuff like that. We only had just a few students who, would, the worst thing they do was maybe tease somebody. I don't know. I didn't really, I kept to myself, I minded my own business. And since there wasn't that many students, it was easy to do that at that time. Versus if I would have gone to a public high school where you have, 1,000 students, So I might have been treated differently had I gone to a public high school. And I might have felt more ostracized and felt more different than everybody. I did feel different in some aspects, but I was okay with that. I dressed my own way. I didn't care what anybody else wore. If I wasn't into like the fads, so I wanted to wear what I wanted. So I had my own sense of style. I had my own way of doing my hair, or my makeup, and I didn't really care what anybody else thought because that's what I wanted to do, and I wanted to be myself. And there wasn't enough students around to really make that a big deal, So, it's I grew up where the bad kids. This is the environment I was in, where we had to have chapel every Friday, because it was a Christian school. So on Friday we had chapel, and the girls had to wear dresses, and the boys had to wear a tie. And so you had some of the boys would rebel and not wear a tie. So the principal went to the thrift store and bought the ugliest ties that he could find. And they're like the old 70s wide ties, and they just all these ugly colors, and he would make them wear them. Well, they actually, eventually, the boys would turn that around, and it became a joke to get one of those ties. And so they would purposely not wear a tie on Friday so they could wear one of those ties. So, that was like one of the worst things that happened in my high school. So it was like I said, there was nothing. The environment was very safe. Sorry, I'm trying to keep my train of thought here. So I'm grateful in one sense that I had that safe. I think that if I had gone to the public school, I would have struggled really hard with having all those people around me. And I never liked large crowds. I always hated going to the mall. And I think that would have been hard for me at the public school with so many students. And then as rough as they are, even back then, you're talking 80s, the kids' public school. It's not anything like today. I don't envy anybody with high school kids today. Fortunately, my kids are older. They're all in their 20s now. So I'm really glad they're out of that system. I don't have to deal with the public schools these days. And my kids all went to public school. And there's, we've seen the issues with some of that environment. But I'm glad that I didn't have to deal with that. I see now that it was even more advantageous for me to be at that school, even though it was kind of a cheesy school. It really was. And, I didn't have that effect of being in that environment of the public high school and all that. But I do wonder, and it makes me kind of sad for people like Ryan, who had to endure that And when he was supposed to have the support system, he was involved with the Christian realm at that time when he was growing up. And he was supposed to have the support system there, and he didn't have it. And a lot of that, I mean, a lot of it is from ignorance, because back then there is a lot less known about neurodiversity. So I'm glad that we're learning, but this is something that needs to be brought up, and we need to talk about it, and we need to, as Christians, understand the support that we need to give to people who are neurodiverse, and understand as best you can how they're thinking, how they function, what they need, what accommodations they need, an environment they need. And so that is my hope, and I hope I can be at least somewhat catalyst for that in any way. So I think that's all my thoughts today, and can't think of anything else I would like to say at this time. So I'll end this video. Thank you for watching, and I'm not sure how often I'm going to do these videos, but when I figure it out, I'll let you guys know. So hopefully this will help somebody, at least to a point, maybe help start a conversation. And again, thanks for watching.